Welcome to Live an Inspired Life Radio with Suzanne Hanna. Raw and honest conversation about the journey through our darkest moments as a way to live a full and wholehearted life. Come and gain powerful insight into how your most painful experiences can illuminate your greatest gifts, teach you the most powerful life lessons, and lead you towards a full and joy-filled life. Now, here's Suzanne.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Live an Inspired Life Radio. I am your host, Suzanne Hanna, and I am super excited today. We have a fabulous guest on, someone who has written a very powerful book that I strongly suggest that you all go out and get. My guest is Deir. And just to briefly describe her to you, Linda didn't have a friend in the world. Fortunately, she had very good friends who were not in the world, her spirit guides. They provided her with unconditional love, and through that, they became the most influential teachers, life coaches, best friends, and protectors she could ever have. From her early childhood, Linda experienced something most of us miss. She realized that she was being guided. So welcome, Linda. How are you?
I'm doing great, Suzanne. Thanks for having me.
So I'm just curious because I know you and I talked briefly and I was so fascinated by your story. I was wondering if you could start out by telling the listeners a little bit about how your journey began.
Well, it began with my first memories, and that started when I was 20 months old. I grew up in an abusive family environment, and at 20 months old, I had met my limit. I realized that I was in danger and that I had to take action to get out of that situation. And being so young, not realizing all the consequences involved in stepping out of that, I shook the gate loose and it opened, and I took off and got on the expressway looking for my dad, thinking that he would protect me and save me from my mom. So there I was in diapers, little snap-on T-shirt and bare feet, running down the expressway, sure of where I was going. I don't know why I knew where to go. And I still don't know if I really did know where I was going, but because I was headed off by two police officers that picked me up and asked me, said, "Where are you going, little girl?" And I said, "I'm going to find my daddy. Something's wrong with my mommy." And so they said, they tried to get me to point out where I lived, guiding them back to my house. And I wouldn't do it. I wasn't going back to the place I just put so much energy in getting out of. So they took me to the candy store, and they bribed me with my favorite goodies, and, they broke down my will, my resistance, to tell them where I lived. And so then I pointed them to where I lived, and they brought me home, and my mom was absolutely shocked when she opened the door. She didn't even realize I was missing, and they, when she, assured them that I was in good hands, she, pretended that she was happy I was returned and all this. That's when tragedy hit. Okay, and she beat me so badly that I couldn't even walk, and I found myself on the floor. And when I woke up, and was absolutely shocked and trembling that I was in the very environment I tried to escape from, I asked for help. I called out for help, not knowing that anyone was going to reply or that anyone was there. And to my surprise, there were many listeners, and all around me, I was surrounded by guardian angels, and I just, for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. And that was the beginning. That was a good day, Suzanne. because that was the beginning of my relationship with my spirit guide angels. That was my first encounter with them in this life, and that they were there, and I had a solid connection with them, and I wasn't alone in this. So that's how it started. So I was not a victim. I wasn't a victim. I ran away from home. I was determined to get out of a hostile environment. I found myself back in it again, and only to be rescued by my spirit guides. So I was not a victim.
Linda, what was that experience like for you at 20 months old and asking for help, not knowing really if anyone would even listen or show up or what that would be, what that experience would be like? What was that experience like for you to then be surrounded by these angels?
Well, what led up to it, the heart, the deep heart feeling that happened to me is I realized I was out of options at 20 months old. Imagine that. That's what it was. That's what it comes down to. If anyone can imagine that, okay? I mean, this is what asking is all about. To have a connection with your guides, the first thing you have to learn to do is to ask. But to ask on a superficial level is not what I'm talking about at all. I don't think that works. I've actually never tried it because I never had the luxury of just going, oh, yeah, I think I'll have some help today. I think I'll ask for, a candy bar. I don't know, as a little kid, what would you ask for, right? I never had that luxury. When I asked, it was serious. So for me, I was out of options. I knew I wasn't going to make it, Suzanne. I knew I wouldn't make it in this lifetime if something wasn't there, okay, other than what I had experienced in this life. There was no hope for me. So when I asked from a very deep part in my heart. I was serious about needing this help, okay? So that's what it felt like. It felt I was out of options at 20 months old. And when I asked, I meant it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of my listeners and the people that I have worked with, there is those moments in all of our lives. I mean, you were 20 months old when this happened to you, but we get to that place where we truly feel like we're out of options, and we truly feel like we are in a place where we have nothing left to do but surrender, not from a place of weakness and not from a place of giving up or being a victim, but from a place of no longer knowing what to do. And
right. And reaching out.
And reaching out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that is really crucial, because when you come from that place, there is an intensity and there is a yearning and a longing and a commitment to really wanting to seek that help. So what happened after you did that? How did you then go from being surrounded by these guides, these angels? What were the next steps? How did you deal with the next several years of your life in living in that abusive situation?
This is real interesting how this unfolded. Now, I was 20 months old when that happened. So, after that happened, I realized I wasn't alone, that I felt like a rock, a brick fell off my chest. Like I knew there was something more going on than what anyone would want me to know about here in this life, okay? And my world was small. All I had was my mom and dad and my brothers, my older brother and my younger brother. So, and nobody could ever begin to understand what was going on here with me. And it was made very clear to me to keep this, quiet and to not talk about any of this. Now, they didn't tell me that in words. It was a telepathic communication I had with them where they made that real clear, and I understood it. So I wasn't going to compromise my greatest secret, my lifeline, if you will. Okay, I wasn't going to do that. So around the age of 3 is the next time I can remember that things got real bad in the family. I was like 2.5 or 3 years old. And my dad would go to work around 5:30 in the morning. He was in the construction business. And at that point, at 2.5, 3 years old, my little brother is 1.5 years younger than me. So he was a baby. He was about 1.5 years old. And my older brother's 4 years older than me, so he was in school, right? So when my dad would, and I didn't put any of this together until I actually wrote Guided. I didn't really think about any of the logistics of this until I wrote the book. And so anyway, I was basically, with my mom, I was the 2.5-year-old, 3-year-old kid that she had to look out for while she was nursing and taking care of this baby, right? And my older brother was in school. So I don't know what got into her, but she made me go out to the glider in the backyard every day. And as soon as I got out of bed and go out to that glider and not come back in the house or even get off of it until just before my dad came home from work. So I'd be out on that glider all day long. She wouldn't let me go to the bathroom. She wouldn't let me eat anything. She wouldn't let me get off that glider for any reason. So I was on that glider, and I would eventually, I'd cry, and I didn't know what to do with myself, and eventually the sun got so hot, and I'd lay on the floorboard of the glider so that the slats from the seats could protect me, shield me from the full intensity of the sun. So I learned how to do that, how to protect myself as much as I could. And I would cry, and I would, I was panicking is what I was doing. And at one point, this went on for days and weeks, and at one point, I just stopped suffering. I just stopped crying. I stopped reacting. And to my surprise, there were my guides. They were back. And when I was no longer, when being on that glider and going through that was no longer such a trial for me, they came through, and there they were. And they were there all along. Had only I not panicked, I had not, reacted to it, all of that, I could have made that connection with them before that, and I wouldn't have had to suffer near as much as I did, as I allowed myself to go through.
So Linda, are you saying that the resistance and the reactiveness and the suffering was keeping you from making that connection to them? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Suzanne. That's exactly it. And see, that's true in people's lives. If they're reacting to their situations or their environment or whatever it happens to be, that it's resistance, you see. It keeps you separate from them.
That's really, really powerful, because I think that it's so habitual for many people when they are in pain or they are suffering that they go into the resistance of it. And what they're thinking or what they're believing in their mind is in some way that that's allowing them to be self-protective. But what I'm hearing you saying is it's actually doing the opposite.
Yeah, because you're panicking. If you're in panic mode, you can't, you're turned off. You're so invested in what you're going through that you're not open to anything.
Wow.
See, here's another thing that's interesting about this, Suzanne, that I'll share with you, is when you're working with your spirit guides, they don't see age as a barrier. This is really important to understand. I was a baby, okay? They didn't see me as a helpless baby. They seen me as a capable human being. They seen me from a great big giant potential and person, entity, something as great as they are. Okay? They didn't see me as somebody who couldn't figure this out.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
That is amazing. That's the amazing that's the reason it's so critical for people to make this connection with their spirit guides. So critical, because they are the only ones who won't treat you like you're not capable. No matter what age you are, no matter how young or old or in between that you are, no matter what you're going through, there's absolutely nothing that you can't overcome to become more than you were before you even got here.
Yeah, I think that's so crucial. I say a lot to my clients and the people that I work with, and one of the things that I say is I will never defend your limitations. Because I think we live in a society where we have friends, we have, support systems that actually defend our limitations, which means, they'll say, no, you can't do it, or, oh, that's too bad, or, how are you ever going to get through this? And we actually give it power.
I know. We get waylaid. We get off track by getting pulled into that. And that's just the karmic path. Suzanne?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's a huge, especially you and I talked about this when we spoke on the phone, about this is such a crucial time of waking up.
Right.
And I think this is a big component to it, is realizing that the limitations that we create are really just an illusion.
That's exactly right, Suzanne. We make it hard when it just doesn't need to be that way.
Really good stuff. When we come back, I want to get more into what happened with your story and what led you to write Guided. You guys are listening to Live an Inspired Life Radio with your host, Suzanne Hanna, and I'm here with my guest, Linda Deir, and we'll be right back.
Now is your chance to be part of the show. Call 877-230-3062. Call in with your questions or thoughts and talk with the host and their guest. Again, that number is 877-230-3062.
We all have amazing talents and knowledge that should be shared with the world. Become a host on Contact Talk Radio and help spread your insight and wisdom. Help others grow as you grow your business and reach a level of connection far greater than you could reach on your own. Take the first step and learn more by visiting contacttalkradio.com or contact Cameron at 425-221-3646. Continue to spread the word about the importance of conscious living. Did you know that you can rate our shows on iTunes? Yep, you can share your thoughts about the topics, the hosts, and the special guests. You can also leave a suggestion. Then, when you're done, rate the show. The hosts love your feedback, and others appreciate it. So next time you download a show, take a second to leave your thoughts and rate it. If you want to stay on top of everything that's happening at Contact Talk Radio, there's no simpler way than following us on Twitter. You'll know what shows are currently playing, who the special guests are, what topics are being discussed. The information is always fresh. You can follow us on Twitter by going to twitter.com/CTR Network. It's easy. Again, that's twitter.com/CTR Network. Better living is just a tweet away.
Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to Live an Inspired Life Radio, and I'm your host, Suzanne Hanna. And today I am with my guest, Linda Deir, and we're talking about her journey that led to her writing her book, Guided. And Linda, you were just talking, which, I'm so amazed around the fact that as you were out on that glider, that the moment you stopped resisting at 3 years old, that you got back in touch with your guides and that you realized that what was keeping you from them was that resistance. What happened after you were able to stop suffering?
what happened was my mom lost interest in punishing me like that.
Mm.
She completely lost interest in it and stopped making me go out on the glider in the morning and sit there all day. That's what was interesting.
So she was no longer getting the benefit of being able to watch you suffer.
Right. So she stopped the punishment.
Mm.
So that's what was really interesting. So there it is again. If you quit resisting it, then, it was like I was a dead subject. There was nothing in it for her. So she quit putting energy into it.
So I'm interested to hear from you because so many of the people I work with and the listeners on this show, we talk a lot about periods of suffering and periods of pain and periods of darkness. And what do you see as those periods? What are those periods of our life or our experience trying to teach us and show us?
Well, there's a saying that my guides have told me throughout my life, and it is, nothing ever happens to you. Everything is happening for you. So the sooner we can understand that and step into our power, and what I mean by that is if you find yourself like I found myself in hell, okay? I found myself in a dysfunctional family where my mom was extremely abusive, and when I found myself in it, instead of resisting it, I didn't resist it, and that's when I bumped into my guides. It's when the beauty shows up. It's when the magic happens. If you want to call it a secret, that's when the secret reveals itself. But it's your own secret. It's what you were holding back from realizing in yourself because you were too invested in fighting it. You can't fight it. Fighting it will not solve it. It won't allow you to learn what it's there to teach you. None of this is happening to people. It's all happening for them. You're not a victim when you come into this life. And I should know that. I came into a family that was very crude, okay? And I had to really get my act together here if I was going to survive this and thrive in my life. I wasn't going to do it by joining them in their dysfunction. That is not how I was going to do it. I knew that at 20 months old,
Yeah, so for you, that was the greatest gift and the greatest lesson.
It really was. And once I bumped into that and I discovered them, my guardian angels, my spirit guides all around me, there was no going back, Suzanne. There was no going back. I wasn't going to invest myself in that dysfunctional family. I chose, did you hear that? I chose to be born into, to learn those lessons.
So Linda, how did you get through the rest of your childhood in knowing that even though your mother no longer took interest in making you suffer because she wasn't getting the reaction that she was getting, how did you get through the rest of your childhood?
Well, it was a learning. I was on a journey, and it was a learning experience. So when that punishment no longer worked, my mom was a pretty determined person. She didn't give up easily, okay? So when that didn't work, she came up with new ways to torment me, okay? Now, what the bigger question here for me was, why did she keep doing it? What was in this for her? I really didn't understand why she kept doing it. I felt sorry for my mom, okay? I didn't hate her. I knew something was wrong with her, I knew that when I told the police officers that at 20 months old. Something's wrong with my mommy. Mm-hmm. And so for me, as I went through my life and she did different things along the way, I was actually concerned for my mom. I was afraid of her. I mean, she was a dangerous person, but I felt sorry for her, See, when you're working with your spirit guides, they don't teach you to be hateful and any of that. They don't teach you anything, actually. They present you with opportunities and events and along your path for you to step into, to choose to do that or not. That's your choice. That's why they call it free will. And I was given those choices to, understand my mom or to do different things that would avoid her wrath, at different times. They came through at one point and they said, life will get better for you as you get older if you can make it through childhood. Now, they told me that is one of the first things I can remember. Now, that turned out to be a promise and a warning, okay? And it turned out to be true. It played out, when it finally played out in my early teens, and I was released from it finally. I can't tell you how much this was true, what they told me. But they knew when I came into this life, my spirit guides were warning me I would hit a point in my life when my life may be cut short. That's what this prophecy turned out to be.
Did you ever go through an experience throughout this whole course of wanting to check out, of wanting to die?
Oh yeah, I actually did. And that's what they were talking about. They said life will get better for you as you get older if you can make it through childhood. So it was that part that was going to be the crossroads for me, is that if I can make it through childhood. So they knew that what I was going to learn let's go to the upside of this deal too, Suzanne. If I can make it through childhood. So throughout my childhood, I was given lots of trials and challenges to overcome, so that when I did get older, when I did become an adult and out of the house and I was on my own and on, I was an instant stellar success in my life, Suzanne, because I had done the heavy lifting as a kid. I learned what it took to make it, to really pull off an exceptional life when I got out of the house. That's what's interesting about this.
So was each challenge for you, or each, dark period for you, sort of a strengthening and a resolve, and actually empowered you as opposed to disempower you?
Well, what it did two things. I had powers I didn't even understand I had or why I had them, but not something I could ever share with anybody, because this was over the top, not of this world. It would have never made sense to anybody. In the 50s, they would have locked me up, Suzanne, okay? It was not something you even talked about. And at the same time, the challenges that I met up with, because I knew what I knew, I was more aware of what was going on. And it made life here more difficult for me because I saw through it. You understand? So as a kid, although I was more aware, I knew who I was. I didn't, tolerate things because I saw through all of it. And I didn't learn all the wrong things in childhood only to have to unlearn them later, right? Mm. Okay, but going through childhood, I spent my time largely by myself because I didn't fit in. I was an oddball. I wouldn't join in. I wouldn't join into the nonsense. I saw through it,
Well, that was one of the things I was going to say. I mean, especially in that time, even today, but especially then, you must have felt very different. And that in and of itself must have been painful.
It was, but it was also a test. Okay? In other words, I was every piece of this was building up my personality, my strength, my courage, my confidence. Everything that I was and became in my adult years, everything I had, it was like having a treasure chest of everything I needed to conduct my life before, and I had no formal training. I didn't go to college. I had no formal training to do all the things I did. It made no sense why I stepped into this. I became an architect, a home builder, an internet service provider, a technology geek. I did so many a real estate broker. I did all these things. How could I do all these things and not be formally educated? I was guided. Mm. They let me know when it was time to step into it, when it was time to do certain things. Even if it didn't make sense, I got all the support I needed. It made no sense, Suzanne.
So Linda, how did your guides communicate with you? Because I know so many people out there who have yearned for this connection and maybe still be in a place of resistance or suffering. How did your guides communicate with you?
Okay. The first two areas, when I was a little baby. Now, this was so easy, a baby could do it, Suzanne, okay? It was so easy, a baby did do it. The first thing that I learned from, and I learned to understand, was from my dreams. They came to me in my dreams, and it was so powerful. This whole guided started out with a dream that I had. That became the life destiny dream for my life. So it started out with dreams. And then it moved to telepathy, a telepathic communication between me and my guides. Now, when I was a little kid, I didn't know what telepathy was, or I didn't know that's what you called it, but I didn't start out like that. I started out talking to them out loud, crying and telling them what was going on with me, how I felt. I would just speak it all out verbally to them while I'm playing in the sandbox in the backyard by myself. And I would just talk and talk and talk. And I knew they were there. I could feel them all around me as I was letting off the pressure, okay? So it's not just how they communicate to you. And I'm going to go back to the resistance again. It's about letting off the pressure. The guides know that until you release the pressure that blocks you from them, that they can't begin to show you anything. Your connection to them it's already broken. So you've got to release the pressure. I did that in the sandbox when I cried and I talked out loud and I told them how I felt and I went through all that, okay? Whatever it takes for the person as an adult to release that pressure. If it's doing like I did that in the sandbox, if it's just talking out loud and talking to them open air to release it and let it go and get that heavy pressure off your chest, then do it.
You know, Linda, I just had a huge aha moment because, and I think this is so crucial for everybody who's listening, because what I'm hearing is that you were willing to be vulnerable. And I think that, there's a piece of that vulnerability that allows you to remove resistance, because when you're actually you have those walls built, or you're guarded, or you're feeling in the need to control or to be in blame or resentment, you're actually the antithesis of vulnerability, except actually you're more vulnerable than we even think we are. But what I'm hearing you say is that you were willing to allow yourself to be open. You were willing to be vulnerable. You were willing to be seen. You were willing to be heard. Do you think that that's a big component?
I totally agree with that, Suzanne. It has to happen. You have to go, you have to take that risk. See, as a little kid, it wasn't a risk for me. For me, it was, I finally met someone who made sense to me. Mm. Nobody here made sense like that. They were absolutely clear. They didn't panic when I did. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it's so fascinating because I'm sitting here thinking, it's so interesting that we actually spend a lifetime building armor and creating resistance, which in essence creates more suffering, when really it's the opposite that we are looking to be called to, which is actually to release those walls, to release that resistance and allow ourselves to be open and vulnerable. And I think we do everything we possibly can to avoid that.
There's no doubt about it, especially as we get older.
Yeah.
The first time that happens, Suzanne, in a person's life, when they're a new person, I don't want to call them a baby. They're just a new person here, okay? Is the first time it happens is when somebody tells them that those are imaginary, that those thoughts were imaginary, that those guides, those friends were imaginary, and then they start feeling embarrassed. Remember that feeling?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Everybody remembers, and I'll tell you something else people remember as a new person here. They remember asking. Everybody did it. All of us have done that when we were small.
Yeah.
Something happened along the way in every one of our lives where we got scared, or we didn't understand, or we were so hurt. Okay, and we asked out loud. We might even have surprised ourselves when we did it. Okay, so here it goes. How come we knew to do that? There's something there, Suzanne.
Yeah, that's really powerful, Linda. And I think you're right. I think as we get older, we move away from that source and we move away from that. And I think it's interesting because, the journey of a lifetime is to move back towards that. And when we get back, I really want to hear about how this all led you to write this book. You guys are listening to Live an Inspired Life Radio. I'm your host, Suzanne Hanna, and I'm speaking with my guest, Linda Deir, and we'll be right back.
We all have amazing talents and knowledge that should be shared with the world. Become a host on Contact Talk Radio and help spread your insight and wisdom. Help others grow as you grow your business and reach a level of connection far greater than you could reach on your own. Take the first step and learn more by visiting contacttalkradio.com or contact Cameron at 425-221-3646. Continue to spread the word about the importance of conscious living. If you want to stay on top of everything that's happening at Contact Talk Radio, there's no simpler way than following us on Twitter. You'll know what shows are currently playing, who the special guests are, what topics are being discussed. The information is always fresh. You can follow us on Twitter by going to twitter.com/CTR Network. It's easy. Again, that's twitter.com/CTR Network. Better living is just a tweet away. Did you know that you can rate our shows on iTunes? Yep, you can share your thoughts about the topics, the hosts, and the special guests. You can also leave a suggestion. Then, when you're done, rate the show. The hosts love your feedback, and others appreciate it. So next time you download a show, take a second to leave your thoughts and rate it.
Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to Live an Inspired Life Radio, and I'm your host, Suzanne Hanna, and I'm here with my guest, Linda Deir, and we are talking about her journey to writing her book, Guided. So, Linda, I am really curious about two things. One is I'm curious about this amazing cover of your book, but I'm also interested in how the book came to be. How did you know that this was a book you needed to write?
Well, we'll start with the cover of the book. Actually, the cover of the book, after I was done writing it presented itself last to me. I mean, I took this picture of my spirit guide angel that's on the cover of the book, the photograph. I took it 20 years ago. I took it in 1994. I happened to have a Nikon camera in hand, and she appeared bigger than life, completely consuming the energy in that room. And I took a picture of her, and as soon as I took it, she dissipated. But then in a dream I had that same year, they told me that I would write this book and that she appeared to me, allowing me to take her photograph so the world could believe. So that was destined to become the front cover of this book, although this photograph sat on my mantle in my living room for 20 years. People would come in and they'd look at it and go, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And little kids would take some people had their little children with them, and they'd take the picture and they would hug it, and they wouldn't let it go, and the parents would try to get it out of their arms, and they'd cry, and they would not let it go. So these little kids saw something in this that the rest of us, just see it on the surface. The little kids feel it. They know what this is.
Right. Was that the only time that they appeared physically?
It's the only time they appeared that vividly physically. I mean, I've seen them out of the periphery of my vision. We all have. If we think about it, we've seen that thing on the, in the periphery move and wondered what that was. That's what that is. But this is the first time one of them appeared right in front of me and freeze-framed for me, if you will, so I could capture the photograph. What's the likelihood of having a camera in your hand at that point?
I know. It's amazing.
It's unbelievable,
But I think it's, as much as it's amazing, it's one of those things, it's like we can't make this stuff up. It's just, it presents itself in the way that it needs to present itself. And I think that, that's the whole point of where we're at right now in raising our level of consciousness in this world and also waking up, is that we need to have more and more of that so that we know, not only do we think or feel, but we know. So let me ask you, what was the journey to actually writing the book? What got you to write the book?
So in 1994, they came to me in a dream, and they told me that I would be writing this book and that it would be about relationships. And they didn't tell me when to write this book. They just told me I would write this. Now, at the time, I was in a failing second marriage, okay? And I'm going, I'm supposed to write a book about relationships? I was kind of laughing, going, okay. But this dream was so powerful, it woke me right up out of my sleep. It's one of those dreams you don't forget, okay? And I thought, well, if I'm supposed to be writing a book, which I had no idea I'd be doing, then it'll show up when it's supposed to. I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to look for it. I'm not going to run after it. It'll happen when it's supposed to. But they gave me the heads up, and they said in that dream that they appeared in that photograph for me so that the world could believe. And so they had it all figured out. They know everything about us, Suzanne. I mean, no wonder we need their guidance. I mean, it doesn't only make this journey here easier, it makes it a lot more fun.
So for you, Linda, what are you hoping or intending or what do you see this book showing people and showing the readers or teaching the readers who get to pick it up and have the privilege of reading it?
Well, the only reason I wrote this book was so people could make their own connection to their own spirit guides. That's the only reason I did it. When I was done writing the book, it was a story about my life. And one day my guides just sat me down and said, okay, we're going to start writing this book. And as I was writing it, they were right there with me, critiquing everything I was writing. I was typing out on my word processor. It was just flowing through me. Another thing they told me in the dream in 1994, they said, when you write this book, it's going to be easy to write. It took me 4.5 months to write Guided.
Wow.
That's fast.
That's very fast.
This is a 370-page book. So and when I was done writing it, Suzanne, I thought I was done, and then they started waking me up in the morning around 1 o'clock in the morning and keeping me up until 3 or 4 o'clock every morning and for the next several weeks. And throughout Guided, they started putting in lessons, tips, learnings, awarenesses throughout the story, okay? Mm-hmm. So now when people read the book, when they read the story, which, by the way, reads like a suspense novel, even though it's a true story, it's a very interesting read. Throughout it, there's these little lessons that they dropped in that explain what I learned in that part they just read. As people go through this book, they just go, I can't believe how I either got it for the first time, or I needed to remember it, or I needed to hear it again. This book spoke to me. Mm. So that's what Guided was designed to do, and I can't take credit for it. The guides were right there with me, and they are the ones that wanted this book out there. I mean, they don't care when you get around to doing it. They just want you to get around to doing it, you know. But this was the right time for me to do it, and so here it is. Here it finally is.
So in knowing that the main intention was to help people or to show people or teach people about the importance of connecting with their guides, is there something sort of like an essence, if you will, of the book or a message of the book of how we can begin to do just that?
Absolutely. It's the first thing that they directed me to learn about in my life, and that was to know who I am. That's going to be the first thing that they direct anybody to knowing about, is knowing who you are, and then you can trust who you are. At that point, you're no longer vulnerable to reaching out to somebody else to have them tell you what to do, have them tell you what to think. You're no longer vulnerable.
Yeah, and I want to clarify that, because I know when you're speaking of that, a lot of people answer that question or come to that question from an ego perspective of who am I? And they look at it from a place of the external, of, you know, my accomplishments or, you know, my acquisitions or things that I've done. But when you say, or when the guides say who you are, what do you really mean by that?
Okay, so I will explain it to you like this. Your guides, here's an example. This might be a good picture for people. You can't go out and desire to make a connection with your guides and chase it and expect that to happen. It will not happen. It will never happen like that. You can't chase it. You have to become who you are so you can attract it. When you do that, you become irresistible to your guides because you are being you.
You know,
now, if you're being a false you, if you're being an ego you, if you're being a persona you, they're not interested in that. You could never attract your guides. You become a spirit guide magnet when you become the authentic you, not the imposter.
You know, when you just said that, Linda, I got goosebumps because, you know, so much of what I have learned on my journey and so much of what I feel that I've been called to teach is really a lot about truth and transparency. And I think that because so many of us still live from the wound of shame, that we are unwilling to be truthful and transparent because out of fear of being judged, out of fear of being rejected, out of fear of not being liked. And I think it's exactly what you're talking about. We really have to get truthful about who we are and what we're experiencing, because without that, we are creating a false persona.
You are absolutely right on that one, Suzanne. And shame, here's a little bit of help that I think will help people if they could just grasp this. Turn yourself into that vulnerable baby, the baby that I was. Take your shame. Identify what those points of shame are. Go off to yourself. Sit in the bathtub. Do whatever it takes and cry. Cry. Just cry out that shame. Cry it all out. And when you do that, oh God, your guides will be there. They will respect you for stepping into that boldly and releasing it and trusting them and trusting yourself. And that will be the beginning of your relationship with your spirit guide angels.
Hi, I'm back. Somehow I got lost. So I'm just curious about, for those who really want to pick up a copy of this book, who really need to hear this message, because I believe that so many people are already being called to pick up this book and hear this message. Where would they find you? Where would they find the book?
Okay. You can go to lindadeir.com. That's DEIR, lindadeir.com. And when you go to that website, it'll take you right to the home page, and just click on the book, Guided. It'll take you right to Amazon.
Perfect.
And also while they're on the website, Suzanne, on the navigation bars up on the top right, there's a navigation bar called Linda's Weekly Guided Insights. It's free. It's a insight that we channel every week that's delivered to their email box from my spirit guide angels. One message per week to anyone who signs up, and they get this one message each week that it helps them navigate their life. It's fantastic.
Linda, well, I just want to thank you because, you really are one of the people who I've spoken to about this, who really has been a powerful teacher, and your willingness to do the work and to open yourself up and to be a conduit for your own spirit guide angels. I just really want to thank you for being a teacher on this path.
Thank you for having me, Suzanne, and the spirit guides. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Until next week, everybody, be blessed.
You've been listening to Live an Inspired Life Radio with Suzanne Hanna. Raw and honest conversation about how your most painful experiences can lead you to a full and joy-filled life. For more information, tune in every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Want to connect with Suzanne directly? Visit SuzanneHanna.com. That's Suzanne, SUZANNE.